It's 8:01 at this intersection, and it's good to see everyone this morning. I'm very excited about what we're going to be talking about today. It's just not a new but ancient movement that needs to be happening and is happening in our city. So it'll be good to talk about it. I'm wondering though, while we let a few other people join us, if there are any announcements this morning, things we all need to hear about. Anyone? Anyone?
Yeah, I have a quick one.
What was his name on that movie? The Anyone movie? Anyone? I'm looking for the community conversations that are happening tonight and on Sunday. Paul, could you maybe talk about those while I pull up the information?
Yes, there are several this evening. In fact, I was invited to several of them and had to decline because of other obligations. Let's see now. The one that comes to mind would be the first of two sessions that the Violence Prevention Strategic Planning Group is meeting tonight. Let's see, at Second Baptist on East Commerce. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I believe it starts at 5:30, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it starts at, I'm going to pull it up. It starts at 6. We're
6.
supposed to be there at 5:30 to set up. Here it is.
There it is, yes. With the other one this coming Sunday at St. Paul Catholic on the west side, near west side. And I think Emma Alexander has information about another gathering that's scheduled for this evening. Emma, did you want to mention that?
It's True Vine Elevation Academy. We are meeting at 5:30 at Emmanuel. It's talking about come partner with us as we are starting up our private Christian school and trying to find out different people in the community and share their mission and vision as they can come and partner with us. So I will put that in the chat as well. That's tonight from 5:30 to about 7. Yes, so thank you, Paul.
And
And-
Lauren, you have your hand up?
That going right along with lessening violence, we've got to think about the death penalty. And so in the fall, there is going to be a major conference against the death penalty at the University of the Incarnate Word. So today, the leader of the, or not the leader of the staff of the National Catholic Mobilizing Network Against the Death Penalty is in San Antonio. And tomorrow at noon at Incarnate Word, there is the first meeting to unite people who want to work on this major conference against the death penalty for the fall. So I'll put in the chat box what people could do if they want to come to the planning meeting tomorrow and organize against the death penalty. And we've been very, very active in families against the death penalty because one of our Incarnate Word sisters was brutally raped and murdered. And we got to know the family of the man who murdered her. And knowing the family, we just felt adding the violence of the death penalty would not bring back our family member. There are other ways to make a less violent society.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And you're going to put that in chat.
Yeah.
And now to Lauren. Lauren, are you there or did we lose you? Bless her heart, she had her hand up and she's still there.
Lauren, you're on mute. Oh, here you go.
There you go. Well, Are you frustrated? I can hear you now and I can see you now.
Oh, you can?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, thank goodness. Okay. So really quick, I'm actually speaking one EcoSA, if y'all are interested, let me know. But Community Bible Church has a campaign coming up in July 29th to August 5th. And their goal is to mobilize 3,000 volunteers all over the city from their church. And so if you've never worked with them before and you have a space where you would like to receive some volunteers, I recommend jumping in. They're a great partner to have, very generous with their time and their hearts. So I'm going to leave John Dominguez's email address in the chat. And if you have a space for volunteers, they want a space to send people. So yeah, if y'all are interested, again, July 29th to August 5th, if you have a place for volunteers, they would love to partner with you.
That's a perfect segue to our briefing next Thursday. It's going to be all on volunteerism and the relationship between volunteers and the community, the city. And I mean that as San Antonio, the city, not city structure, but for our city. But we're also going to be hearing about a platform, Catch a Fire. And so, and relationship, what that relationship looks like. And so I encourage everyone to come next week. So it's 8:08, and we're going to be looking at today our newest baby collaborative, but not a newest baby when it comes to the work that we're doing mutually. In fact, it might be one of the most original collaboratives on the planet, and that's the planet itself. And so the care of, I found out the Latin definition of alma mater in the process. We always talk about our alma maters, and that literally means nourishing mother. And so I just found that very curious that we're all of us share the same alma mater. When we talk about our alma maters, it's always like, so what school did you go to? But the alma mater that we all share is our planet. And so it's been really good to look at that and explore it together. So we're going to do that this morning. I'm going to bring you a little up to date. What I want to do is I'm going to share with you where it's come in its work. So I'm going to begin where we wish to end. So I hope everyone can see this on the screen. This is a photo of a whiteboard from just this past Monday. And this collaborative has been meeting, I think it was the beginning of December when we just first invited people to come together, and Arthur Dawes, who's among us, really encouraged that to happen. How everything is related and how we care for our earth is also how we care for each other. So this again was from this last Monday. And you can see over here on the left side that if there was a mission statement to this, it's from listening to everyone who's come together, it's caring for our planet by making a major cultural shift across our entire city and county. What does that mean? What is missing in our mix and what has come out of the voices in the collaborative is that there needs to be a kind of a mass tipping point. That there are, and I'll show you in a minute, there are a lot of organizations in our city who are working on environmental justice, sustainability, resilience, climate change, also gardening, tree planting. And but what they have voiced in the collaborative is that the voice itself is not large enough to tip the work forward. So this is really part of the main reason this collaborative is working together, is so that the voice becomes larger in the community itself. And that it will involve more San Antonians in this larger collaborative effort for our county and city, so that there are ways for people to engage from their home, like recycling and not running water when you're brushing your teeth. What are we each doing every day that makes us complicit, but also that we can contribute to that change and cultural shift? So from our homes to civic engagement itself, and that by working together, as we all know, co-laboring together, things might be more efficient and effective, but there will be greater community impact. In one sense, we could probably translate this into almost all of our collaboratives. How can we be stronger together, have a larger voice, engage, empower people from their home into their community, and that we might make that cultural shift? So these are just some action steps. There was the largest group of people to gather ever for a collaborative at its initial meeting. Normally, I would say a collaborative will have somewhere between, I don't know, 6 and 12 people gathered the first time. And this one was closer to 30 or 40. So it tells you how many people are out there doing valuable work and who are very committed to it. So this past week, this past Monday, after those 3 months, it already had its first larger gathering, inviting more people into it. And it broke down into 4 major working groups where they talked about what they wanted to do and try to focus a little bit on that work. So the Compassion Tree Project, some of you might recognize that name. That project, it was stronger right at the beginning of the pandemic. It continued, but it really kind of lost its oomph, like a lot of us did with the pandemic. But it was a pilot project and still exists with Parks and Recreation here in San Antonio in the city. They are always available for tree plantings, tree giveaways, and adoptions. But they also have some grants that are available. The smallest amount of grant that they will accept is $5,000. Most of their grants are $20,000 to $50,000. And this is for tree planting and landscaping. And individuals can apply for those. Neighborhoods, congregations, organizations, green spacing, anybody, and Parks and Rec will actually help you write the grants. They're fairly easy. And part of the grant writing also includes paying a landscape architect to help with that expansion of the greening of our city. So part of this group was to expand the number of trees that are actually planted. We need more trees. Let's see, they're looking at piloting a neighborhood project. So that will be used then as an example for this. There's funds and grants that are happening out there on local, state, and federal levels. The major one that's being looked at is a federal grant with an April 15th deadline about creating congregations and organizations that already exist, facilities that already exist, and boosting those to be resiliency hubs so that those could also be cooling shelters or warming shelters, depending on our inclement climate. But that those are also places of well, like Bridges to Care, people who've been trained in mental health care, a food pantry, centralized locations within specific geography. So there aren't just like 2 or 3 of them in San Antonio, but we have 20 Bridges to Care cohorts. So we could have easy 20 resiliency hubs. So that one's being worked on. They found some volunteers in the Environmental Protection Network, skilled grant writers who are retired and can help with grant writing. Isn't this exciting? The things that happen during collaboratives is that we find out we have many resources, and until we get together, we just don't know all of them, and we can share those. They're also working on a city-specific plan where people within the collaborative go and talk with their council persons. There are dollars available and how we can go about greening becoming a much more resilient city. Another group was looking at greening, solar, waste from landfills, talking more about composting and how we can be much better at that. It's a lot about education in this area and projects, connecting people with projects that already are happening, using solar model in neighborhoods. And there's a group, Big Sun, that has models happening. The exciting thing about this particular collaborative that a lot of other collaboratives don't have to begin with, they already had a list developing from within one of the organizations of pulling together all the different organizations that are working with the environment. But they're developing, like many collaboratives do, a Google shared drive, and with a master list of those organizations, and they're planning to do that by the end of this week. An email list for our communications email blast, which is already happening, a speakers bureau, a possible website. But one of these things that which happens a lot with collaboratives, they're like, we should have a website. And one of the things that they did discover, now they may still create one, but they found that there's already a volunteered creation of a website. Not this one, went to the wrong website. Sorry about that. Called deacceleration.news. Deacceleration.news. I want to show it to you. Maybe. Here we go. I'm almost there. Hang in there with me. And so they're already feeding their events, pointing people to this website because it's got great information about what's happening for the earth and all her families, as the byline says here for deceleration. News and analysis for San Antonio. Deceleration. Thank you, Diane. She's correcting my pronunciation. Diane, did you want to say something about this website? That would be lovely.
Just that Greg Harmon is the catalyst behind it, and he has a background in journalism, and he worked as a organizer with the Sierra Club for a while, but he's very connected to the community, and so he really wants to promote what's already happening in our community.
And which we know as collaboratives, that's what collaboratives help do the most, is pointing to things that are already happening. I love the calendaring that is done here. So look at this one. We'll just look because that's today. Not like we don't have already lots of things happening today. But like, how great is this? Right? And then, and of course, he does have, here's our own Douglas Melnick, our Chief Sustainability Officer here in San Antonio, but he has news for us to learn from. So that's deceleration.news, deceleration.news. So you can see with this collaborative as well, that in many ways from other collaboratives, it has lots of steps that have already been done. And it's just a matter of connecting them and putting them together so others and everyone has access to them. I'm going to quick show you the list here of the Sahara Club had put this together, but of different organizations. And some of us know this from other work we've done, more or less like a directory. I'm pointing here mostly to the organization names of things that already exist in San Antonio that are working in that direction. And so we're building upon that. Sacred.org can tell us that that's like an ongoing piece of work of finding out who all is really out there and who the point of contacts are. And so that's part of the work. Lisa has her hand up. Lisa.
Hi, so I think this is great. I have a question that I've been wondering. So around town, I see anytime that they're going to do some development, entire acres of trees, hundreds and hundreds of full-grown trees are just, I mean, they just bald the landscape. And, you know, I always think, don't we have a tree ordinance? Don't we have rules about that? What is the value of a tree to our community and the oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange, the shade it provides? And how are these companies able to come in and just strip the entire landscape, and they pave it so there's no more grass for drainage? They put up buildings, and then they plant, you know, a couple of bushes or something, tiny. And you see it everywhere. And the landscape of San Antonio, since I moved here 20 years ago, it's just, you know, right and left on 1604 out where I live, what used to all be trees is gone. What is done about that? And the city doesn't seem to follow up. If they had a tree ordinance, they don't seem to be doing anything about it.
So this is a perfect example among many examples of why this collaborative and why they talk about tipping point in a larger voice. Along with the Compassion Tree Project, it's the opposite side of the coin to stop cutting down trees. You're not the only one. There are a lot of us recognizing to stop cutting down trees and to start planting trees. But and there are people out there working precisely on what you're talking about and engaging the city leadership and bringing that larger voice. I don't know this is indicative. I'm just going to like point to it. But today's gathering, we have 32 people, and we've been getting closer and closer to 50 people every week. There's something about the environment. I don't want to say we don't care for it. I know that's not the truth. But maybe as humans, we assume it too much, that it's there, and but that care needs to be very intentional. And so I put that screen back up, that whiteboard, where this collaborative itself is saying exactly what you're saying, Lisa. Our voice is not large enough. And until we can get to a tipping point of voice, that the culture won't shift. And we've talked about that in recent weeks as well at the intersection, that research tells us that 10% of a population needs to kind of be on the same page and voicing. So in our community, that's about 200,000 people. And I would say not just about the environment. We're talking at the intersection here about collective compassion itself, you know, in terms of violence and domestic violence. Well, violence on our earth, we're not caring for it, falls all in that same category, right? Along with death penalty and food security. So one of the things that I'm working on with the initiative in Compassionate San Antonio is a counter for our culture in San Antonio. I'm calling it counterculture, and to count the number of people who are putting our voices together and moving in the direction of a cultural shift of care for ourselves, for each other, for within the systems, including our city system. Can we get more compassion in there and quit cutting down trees? And moving policies and processes and actual practices in our community towards that kind of care. Lisa, that was a perfect example of just one point. My grandson They must be doing it at school, and I am grateful for his school. But he has been coming home with pointers for all of us, and he is in kindergarten. And so one of his first pointers, of course, I've already mentioned, to quit running the water while you're brushing your teeth, right? And we all can do that. And we all get that. Of course, he also came home with the pointer that we really need to sort out our waste. If we could go one step further, we should evaluate our waste. What are we wasting? How little or how much is going into those brown, green, and blue bins, right? And then crazy school, I'm telling you, he went on a field trip to a landfill. I'm wondering how many people on the screen have been to a landfill. And that one, talk about a chatterbox. He came back and he was like, Gran, it's a mountain. Have you ever seen a mountain of trash? It's that kind of awareness and reality that, you know, I'm preaching now, right? But that we need to get in touch with, and that we can't assume our planet. We're, you know, here to care for it, which is another thing that I wanted to look at on screen. And then we're going to pause. I'm going to invite those who are with that collaborative to be thinking about comments that they might wish to enter after we pause here in a minute. But I wanted to point you to the Parliament of World Religions. If you're not familiar with this organization that's been around over 100 years, but I went to the World Parliament, I think it was in 2015. I'd have to look, but yep, here it is, 2015. And they basically said, based on our faith traditions, our commitments to the planet, but also based on the science, that if we don't focus on the planet, the environment, everything else that we're doing is moot. And we've talked about too, the studies have shown the closer to the ground that we are focusing our work, the more impact it has. And we normally talk about that in terms of Maslow's hierarchy, close to the ground of food and housing, safety and security. But if we want to get close to the ground, we need to be talking about the ground itself and what's happening with the ground. And so the Parliament is also a really good source for information, not just on the climate, on other things as well. But they have done some significant work in terms of speaking for us, speaking for the planet, but engaging people globally in this challenge in front of us. If you've never been to a parliament, we're really fortunate this year, 23, that the Parliament of World Religions is happening in the United States. It doesn't always happen there, but it's happening in Chicago, and I'm going, and I'm going to be sending out information later. I'm hoping a whole bunch of other people will join me there. So at 8:30, and Shahram, I see your hand as well, but at 8:30, I'm going to take a brief pause, and then we can just go into some conversation. But thank you all, those who might need to leave at this point. Thanks for being with us today and looking at our newest collaborative. Next week, we're going to be looking at volunteerism. Collaboratives are largely, in a sense, made up of people, even though some of them might be paid, but most everybody in collaboratives are volunteering to be in that particular collaborative. No one is assigned to be in it, not even government employees. They come because they're committed to it, and then they bring what they bring to the table. So next week, we're going to be talking about the relationship of volunteers with, and when I say our city, I mean San Antonio and greater San Antonio. What does that relationship look like? We're going to be looking at a skill-based model on volunteerism in San Antonio. And Lauren's going to remind us again about 3,000 volunteers being available at the beginning of August. So I hope that you're able to come next week and seriously look at what does it mean to be a volunteer and how does that work into our collaboratives, our community collaboratives that we have formed. So at 8:31, we're going to open this up to more community conversation, and I am going to be calling on some of the folks from the collaborative itself. But Sharon, what's your thought and question today?
Good morning, everyone. Actually, I just to mention about the environment. Maybe some they knows about the city I come from. It's most about 90%, more than 90%. Maybe I can say 95%, same as San Antonio. And unfortunately, they start about 50 years ago, less than us. Let me say about 44 years ago. They cut the trees. They changed the environment. The heat it used to be not more than 110 or 115 in that city, what I come from. It's southwest of Iran. It's hottest place almost in Iran, end of the Persian Gulf. It's now, unfortunately, in summertime, it gets sometimes to 130, 132. That's all just because of the changing the environment, killing the trees, and change many things for the people, the heat, the cities, the factories, and many other things. They change in the city, and that's it's changed just like is not the city now. It's like a factory, big factory, all homes, all roads, and just you can see the heat. You can walk in that city now. Summertime, you can cook easy as the omelet in the streets. And that's what I actually wonder about San Antonio, because it's very similar as the city Ahwaz, what I came from. And unfortunately, I see the big houses changed to mini house, and the house changed to apartment. And little by little, I see the changing. They cutting the big farm and then change to this houses and then to the apartment. The same things is happened in that city. And that's what is my concern. That's why I want to share it. If we don't stop it now, and then this city, maybe 10, 15 years later, the heat in this city will be about our 132. Thank you to listening.
So Sharon, that is so like bottom line to the point. When we met on Monday as a collaborative, I asked the question about if this collaborative is able to garner, that tipping point in movement, what would we see in the year 2030, right? And you've given a perfect example that with more tree coverage, for one thing, and how we are caring for our land, we would see a drop in numbers as opposed to an increase of numbers. And so that would be part of it. Diane and Arthur, I know that you're both with the collaborative. Do you have any thoughts, things that I kind of missed about the collaborative, or something you'd like to share? Maybe Arthur does. There he is.
I'd like to share that that Pope Francis wrote a letter 7 years ago, and they've shown it at St. Mary's and other places. In fact, last week we were at Our Lady of the Lake with some students who are very, very involved in the future of their environment. In this letter, he talks about the integral relationship between care for ourselves, nature, the poor, and relationships with each other. One thing he says about the poor especially is the indigent and the disappearance of the indigenous cultures and how they're deeply affected. But I thought it's kind of fascinating to see that, like you were saying in the beginning, Anne, that we're all connected, and it's like the way we treat ourselves, and just like you're saying about the different things we can do, like micro things we can do, like the trash and so on, at the same time to be involved in these communal efforts. I like that point about the tipping point, because I think that can generate a lot of common energy And I think we need that. We need that in our community. We need to also clarify our values in terms of, I just read something yesterday, or heard a program yesterday that said that 99% of our air is affected by the industrial pollution. And then to hear people talk about the plastics. We have it at the headwaters at Incarnate Word. It's a corporation of the sisters, and they have a film library which is available, and we will have films available to show to the public and a speakers bureau. And we're working on eco tours. We're taking young adults on eco tours and welcome other people to attend.
It's really great. Diane, did you want to?
I want to
anything?
hear from Randy. He's had his hand up for a
Oh,
while.
I didn't see that Randy had his hand up. Okay, Randy, go Randy. You're on mute.
Okay, now I got it.
There you
Thanks.
go.
Okay, I was just going to say in response to Lisa's question, you know, it's just money. The new developments, it's cheaper to clear cut and lay pipes and all that kind of stuff than it is to leave a nice old tree. Most of these new developments are being put up as quickly as possible, and I think if you see something like this and you go into the sales site, into the office there and say, you know, love your houses, love your construction. I hate that you clear cut this hillside. And the people that run those offices a lot of time are young people selling to young people. And there's value in an old oak tree sitting on a lot. Out in Spring Branch here, see, there's this push and pull between these great old trees and the cedars that pop up everywhere. And the cedars are what are taking this water table down. And so, you know, if you can clear an acre of the cedars that have come up from the cattle drives from Mexican back 100 years ago, then you will have more water because they just suck up, you know, they just suck up our rain. So, you know, it's kind of complicated, but I think as far as the developments are concerned, it is money. And if they can sell a lot for more that has an old oak tree on it, they will see the value to it.
Mhm. That comes from
Yeah.
that comes from a real estate person, so he knows what he's talking about. And I love, Randy, that you said, you know, stop and tell somebody. You know, we're all accountable to this. And so, yeah, of course, city leadership needs to hear the voices, right? Back to that tipping point. But the people who are actually there clear cutting need to come face to face with the voice as well. That's basic, like nonviolence is, you know, you need to voice your voice to the voices and faces that are about the practices that they're complicit in and harming the planet. Peter, your hand is up.
Thank you, Ann. Yeah, I represent District 4 on the CPS Rate Advisory Committee, and over the past almost 2 years now, we've been working very closely with their energy efficiency conservation program, the STEP program, and we have really worked diligently to expand that weatherization program to our low to moderate income customers. And that's where the greatest impact could be made with that energy conservation. And I can really see how this group could be at that grassroots level, educating for those that get those services and adding that extra value. And right now with the IRA, with CPS and the city, and if you recall, City Manager Walsh was talking about that collaborative work with the new, what's called the Resiliency, Energy Efficiency, Sustainability Fund. So with that rolling out, there's grants there as well. And I'm sure that this collaborative is looking at all those items, but I'm very interested in that a targeted weatherization program with energy efficiency conservation within it that can really tip the scales for those that are most impacted, even as we look at raising the rates. You know, so we're talking the economic impact, but at the same time, we're addressing the environment. I mean, I think it's a great opportunity. So I just want to encourage the group, and I'm sure we'll be crossing paths as we continue to work together.
Can I add on to that? I think we also need to understand what some of the obstacles are that prevent people from taking advantage of those programs, including having clear title to their homes, having a decent roof and foundation, which is often prohibitively costly for homeowners in low and moderate income communities to afford to repair so that they qualify for those programs. So, you know, I think we need to understand what some of those obstacles are and address those as well. So it's all interconnected.
Yes,
And at 8:42 in these last couple of minutes, I want to look at process, especially because Diane just spoke. One, I want to encourage everybody to scroll through your chat box if you haven't read everything, because people have put in books, have put in, you know, different efforts. I reminded everybody about the grants of 5,000 to 50,000 that are available through the city for tree planting. You know, think about your, you know, place of worship and prayer. Think about your organization. Think about your neighborhood. Again, and I put in Michael's contact, and you can just contact him, and that'll get you started in that exploration. These things take time. That's not an excuse, right? That's just how we need to have our eyes working. So when the faith initiative started with the city, which is how I was employed with the city as the faith liaison, it is under the Department of Human Services. That's not Human Resources, which is personnel, it's Human Services. Head Start, our senior centers, childcare, family assistance, direct human services. So when I started the work, I was moved to look at things, at which we do, that have direct human impact. And so we started and still do things around food insecurity, homelessness, immigration, refugees, resourcing of care for humans that they can get their hands on. But then this Diane Dustroff contacted me, and at that time, which is now 6 years ago, and said, but what about the environment? What about the environment? And Diane, if you would, in chat and think in your head, how many years of your life would you say that you've been concerned about and working on the environment? So if you could put that in chat. And so as she knows, my response at the time was, well, you know, I've been guided to work in those areas that are most directly human, right, in nature. And 6 years later, we now have a collaborative. I did connect Diane at the time with the Office of Sustainability. And as she knows, we've had, I don't know, a good 3 or 4 oomphs in the last 6 years of kind of coming together to a table with city and some folks out there who are concerned, specifically faith community. They've done a little. We haven't done maybe the major leveraging, the major tipping point yet. But here we are 6 years later, and we're working specifically on the tipping point. So what did Diane put into our chat? Did she put a number? There you go, since 1970, but in San Antonio since 2009. Now I know a lot of us could take her equation on something that we've been working on, right? And probably come up with similar numbers. And we all know that we have a passion somewhere. So this collaborative work that we do is so important. And I think we're finally also reaching a tipping point on just collaborating together and working together. It's kind of what we used to call in the Peace Center of San Antonio a win-3. That if we are working on our passion here and it's moving forward in our world and our life, that's a win, even though it may seem slow. 1970, 2009, that's a long time to be patient and resilient and keep working forward. But the win is if we do that, then we are a stronger community. That's win number 2. You know, we're stronger than together, right? And if we keep and move together more as a puzzle together, as a collaborative, then we also have a better world, a greater good. It's good for the entire planet if we do our part. And then we reach towards a tipping point. Also makes me think that when San Antonio became a compassionate city in 2017, there were approximately almost like 96 or something compassionate cities on the planet. There are now 450. There is a movement happening. There is a movement happening, but it's a major cultural shift that we're talking about. And we all have to be involved. That's my sermon for the day. Didn't mean to have one, and it's not in my direct job description, so I'm going to leave it at that. It's 8:48, and I long to see you and more at the intersection next Thursday when we talk about the role of all of us in our city, what we call sometimes volunteerism. So see you next week. Have great weekends. And I'm going to go work on that Count Our Culture. And we're going to get that moving. Take care. Bye.